Ohio State University?
Yeah. No. No, we live in Gahanna, Ohio.
In where?
Gahanna, Ohio.
Johanna.
Gahanna.
Oh, Gunna, up there. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I have a hearing issue, which was confirmed to be worse than I thought it was a few days ago. um, thank you so much for coming. You know. So you just experienced, by this chanting, the thing we are most known for. The second thing we're most known for, well, actually, I think it's a tie. You'll find out at the end, which is very delicious vegetarian food. But it's not just vegetarian. Actually, we don't even look at it like that. This is food that has been prepared specially and offered to the Supreme Lord as an offering to God. So it's sanctified, you can say, or blessed, you might say like that. And we're pretty well known for that, too. Even back when we first started this movement in America, people sometimes would say we were the kitchen religion, because all of our, whatever our service is, you know, we have a little service now. Following the service is practically always a delicious, free vegetarian meal of this wonderful food that's been offered to God. And we have a name for that. It's called prasad. So if you hear, okay, prasad, you know it means the food that has been sanctified. So chant a small bhajan. A bhajan is a hymn, and this hymn is describing Krishna and his place in Vrindavan. Krishna is the name for God, and it means, it may be on there, Jai Radha Madhava. I'm not sure, is it? Okay. So Krishna is the name for God, and it means all attractive. And it's a quite suitable name among many, many other names, but we could say one quality of God is that he must be all attractive. You know, there can be no one more attractive than God. Of course, in Kali Yuga, some people try to compete, but it's not going to work. Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. His Divine Grace, ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. For Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. I want to ask our guest, are some of you part of a class in, I don't know, comparative religion or some kind of thing like that? Okay. And so you've visited other places of worship, and is that right?
Yeah, that's our first one.
Oh. Well, thank you. I guess we're also convenient to right across the street, right? Okay. Have you ever been into a place of worship where they have like deities? Or first time you've seen deities? Yeah. Okay. So maybe I'm going to speak a little bit about that. I know in the Catholic faith they have deities, or they have icons of Mary and Jesus. There's one up north, up on 23, called Our Lady of the Shrine. It's a very interesting story because she was brought here in the late 1800s from Europe, and where finally arrived, and they had to come to this place, and it was no convenient conveyances, of course. So it was in like some kind of an ox cart or horse-drawn cart. And all of a sudden, the heavens opened up. And it wasn't just raining, it was pouring. All accounts, it was pouring, torrential downpour. And here was this procession of people that had come to greet this statue, this deity of Mother Mary and her son. And the amazing thing about it was, as the procession continued, you had to go, wherever that procession was, the rain didn't fall. And this was not just something that was noted by the quote-unquote believers. It was something that was seen by also the local people, that they were having to go through fields, because it's very agricultural up there even now. So that was, attributed as a miracle. And it was one of many that are attributed to this deity. So in the basement of their church, there is a whole display, many displays, full of abandoned crutches and different types of casts and evidences of people that walked in with the help of different devices and were able to walk out without any help. Or there was also, there's accounts with doctors also, you know, first you see the doctor, oh, the person has whatever it is they had, uncurable, you know, and yet the person, by their faith in this particular deity, they were cured miraculously. So many miracles are contributed to this deity. So we're not the only faith that actually has deities, but there is some difference. So in that deity there, that I noticed that she has very beautiful dresses on. And Lord Christ, he also has dresses. Now you see our deities here, they're beautifully dressed. And this isn't something that happens occasionally. This happens every single day. Their dresses are changed, and flower garlands are offered to them. And everything that's eaten here is prepared with great love and devotion as an offering to the Supreme Lord God. So the lady there, I was talking to her about this, and she said, well, their deity, and they dress once a month. But when she heard that we were doing this, she said, would you like to see all the vestments, which that's what they call their dresses. And she took me to another room, and there was racks of dresses very neatly on hangers with coverings and descriptions and a day, you know, when it was first used, and the person who sewed for it and the country they were from. And she told me, I was looking at all these countries all over the world, South America, even Korea and Japan, everywhere in the world. She says people all over the world sew for this deity and send as an offering of their love or their thanks, they send dresses. So, but our deity worship here is a very special thing, because it allows us, when I say here, but in the Hare Krishna movement, in many of the Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophies, or in a broader term, Hindu practices, the deities are taken care of very meticulously on a daily basis, not just on Sunday or once a month, but actually on a daily basis. And in most of our larger centers, the deities are actually dressed twice a day. In night, they go into their night dress, which is very nice, but far less elaborate, and not so many jewels and jewelries. So the movement we are in, it is represented by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the person who brought the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra from obscurity, or relative obscurity, meaning that it wasn't openly performed. At the time, there was actually some opposition towards this practice of chanting. So the adherents, those who were practicing, were doing so secretly in their homes or other places where they wouldn't be detected by the government, which was largely Muslim. And even in the modern day Krishna consciousness movement, we have had devotees in various countries that to this day still have to practice secretly, or risk persecution, or at least being, if you're not from that country, being, you know, expelled. And notably in Russia, it was maybe a very dramatic example of this. The devotees in Russia were so undercover that they were even careful identifying themselves to one another unless they be detected. And this was during what they call the Iron Curtain era, which I think was before, you all seem like fairly young folks, so this was before your time. But during that time, there was very strict, you couldn't bring outside books, you couldn't bring religious books in. And His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, whose figure, his statue, his murti form is there in the back watching over us. So he is the one who brought the Hare Krishna movement to America and outside of India, and established it first in America, then ultimately all around the world. And his name is A.C. Abhaycharan, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, and we affectionately call him with reverence Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. So he did himself many miracles, uncounted miracles. One time he was asked by a person well, can you show me? Can you show me your miracles? Do you do miracles? It's expected that saintly people will do something miraculous. So at that time, there were some other yogis from India, and their miracles consisted of going like this, opening their hand, and some dust would fall out, some kind of dust, or some gold chain, or even a watch sometimes, you know. That was their miracle. So they asked Srila Prabhupada, so what are your miracles? So he looked around the room at all of us who were quite younger at that time, and he goes, these are my miracles. Because he had taken very uncultivated, uncultivated, clueless Western individuals and given us an opportunity to elevate ourselves in this lifetime. By elevate ourselves, we need to lift up our consciousness, to actually perfect our consciousness. And he taught us the actual meaning of life and how to attain a perfection of life. We talk about perfection. Well, what is that? That perfection is that we free ourselves from the unwanted things in our heart, the things that distract us, that may even harm us, hurt us, or pain us. You know, we talk about heart disease. I just read about a passing of a devotee, and they looked in the obituary, and it goes, heart disease. And I was thinking, no, he didn't die of heart disease, because we are free from heart disease by our practice, our spiritual practice. Of course, they're meaning something different, but for us, the disease of the heart is all the unwanted, dirty things that fall into the heart, cloud the consciousness, and ultimately give us great distraction, a lot of pain in our life generally, and because of these things that are distracting us and causing us pain, we also quite often cause other people pain by our behavior. So by getting free of all these unwanted things in our heart, it's described in one very beautiful prayer that it's like the dust that covers a mirror. So when you have an unclean mirror and you're trying to do whatever you do in the mirror, like say you're trying to shave yourself, it's hard to do because there's a distortion. But when you clean the mirror, everything becomes very clear and understandable again. So our heart is covered with dust. The dust is accumulated over lifetimes. So what is this dust? It's the impressions that we have taken lifetime after lifetime, birth after birth, from the material atmosphere, the material world. But when that dust is removed, then the real personality, the real personality is actually a soul. We are all souls. So we have these temporary bodies, temporary IDs, just like this is a temporary dress that I'm wearing. I was going to say I might not be wearing it tomorrow, but we change our clothes regularly, right? And sometimes the clothes get old. We toss them out. We don't think twice about it. So we remain the same. Oh, it's still me. But actually this body isn't me. The body is temporary, and me, I am a spirit soul. So this spirit soul is what we are giving our attention to. Because without giving attention to the spirit soul, which is the real person, then one is missing out on the greatest benediction that is offered only in the human form of life. Animals have souls. There is no doubt. Even a tree has a soul. Any living entity has a soul. But there's a developed consciousness in the human form of life where we can actually realize who we are, why we are here, and what we should be doing, what this life is intended for. The animals and the humans and other species, we have basic propensities. We all eat, we all sleep, we all mate, we all defend to some degree or another. But only the human form of life gives you the opportunity of elevating your consciousness and actually realizing who you really are. And along with that realization comes the ability to act on that level. You know. So this knowledge is recorded in great historical literature based in India, eternal literature, eternal teachings, we can say. In other words, you can give an approximate time, like Bhagavad Gita was spoken approximately 5,000 years ago, but the teachings were present before that. It was recorded 5,000 years ago. Previous to that, it was simply spoken, and people would actually remember, you know. Now, if I were to say, okay, take a pause here, and what did I just say? I might not even be able to remember what I just said, what to speak of anyone else. So this is a symptom of the age that we live that is called Kali, an age of quarrel and dissent. And great sage was understanding that people are not going to be able to retain what they were hearing. And in order to assist people in the future, when not only would their memories be subjected to imperfections, even the longevity of life would be greatly diminished. I mean, even in the Bible, they talk, I think it was Abraham, lived 5,000 years. People lived long times in ancient times. We can't even imagine that possibility, and maybe we wouldn't even want to imagine it, you know. So we have the same situation. So then as the times were wearing on, it could understand not only were we entering into a different mood, a different atmosphere, we wouldn't live as long, we wouldn't be able to remember things. We got to jot this down. We have to record it for posterity, you could say, so that people in the future would have the opportunity of learning this great science of self-realization. So the spiritual practice in this age that is the most effective is the chanting of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Stop it. I'm a little bit on call here today, and I normally don't leave the phone on when I'm speaking, but just have to be available for a particular situation. So, in order to help us in a disadvantaged time, when there's quarrel, there's dissent, our lifetime isn't very long, we can't remember anything, it says, in fact, there's a description, and above all, the mind is always disturbed. You know, this is a symptom of our times. I was just reading a small article about, I mean, it's actually shocking about how the suicide rate among young children means under 19, has gone to such a high level over any other age group. And young people talk about it as like we might talk about going to school. Like, they talk about this. I mean, it's simply like kind of shocking even to think that young people would be so distressed, they would be so disturbed that this becomes a so-called option for them. Yeah. So the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is a spiritual practice that cleanses the heart of the covering of the dust. So this dust I wanted to describe. What is this dust that's covering the heart? Well, everything you hear, everything you see, everything you experience leaves an imprint. You may not remember it or recall it. Most of the time we don't, but there's an imprint there, deep within the consciousness. And that begins to impact us as we gradually, grow along in life. And sometimes you can say, oh yeah, this happened when I was a kid, that's why I'm this way, or that's why I feel that way. But a lot of it we don't remember. We have seen something, and it causes a certain feeling, a certain mood within us. It may make us act in a certain way even, and we're not aware of it. It's in our subconscious, but it's even deeper. And it's not just in this lifetime, it's in previous lifetimes, and it's all compiled. It all comes along with you at the time of death into your next body. At the time of birth, you can bring all this stuff with you. So when we can free ourselves of this dust, this accumulated dust over birth after birth, then the actual real you can shine out, shine forth, and we can actually become closer to being who we are and closer to our connection with the Supreme Lord. So this chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is not something that is only we can do it, nobody else can do it. Anyone can do it. Srila Prabhupada said even a child, even a dog can chant. And we've actually had, kids, you can see it, but we've actually had experiences of dogs who have, if not chanted, have showed up every time there's a chanting going on. There was one dog in New Vrindavan who used to sit outside every time Prabhupada was there. Sit outside, and when the kirtan would go, he would start to, make a dog sound, but not in a displeasing way. And Prabhupada said, you just see, even this dog, he is chanting. You could understand. In Russia, there was just very recently, the devotees go out on the street and chant. So after the Iron Curtain, the Russians are one of our biggest congregations of devotees. It's totally amazing. They went from obscurity, they went from persecution, to being really a very major force. And they go out in the streets and they chant, even in the snow. So they're out chanting, and in this one place, I can't remember, St. Petersburg or where it was, Moscow, but this dog would show up every day after day after day, and people were looking around to see where was the owner, and they didn't see a owner attached to the dog, but that dog would be there, and you'd be peacefully there while, they'd be chanting, and then when they would start dancing, he'd get up and he would start to swing. So even a dog can do it, The dog can benefit. Even these plants, there's souls in these plants, they benefit by the sound because it's a powerful spiritual sound vibration. And it cleanses that dust from the heart that is accumulated. And as such, anyone can take part. Anyone can do it. And you don't have to be a Hare Krishna to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. The mantra will not itself limit itself only to the Hare Krishnas. It's non-sectarian. So all of this getting into the deities. So one of the ways to understand this mantra is that it's a prayer to the Lord to please engage me in your devotional service. That I want to use my life, my body, for you, to serve you and your devotees. And it's actually even part of what you could say the deity worship, because we're asking, dear Lord, please engage me, please let me serve you. And the chanting is also a form of devotional service to the Lord. So in the simplest form of deity worship, one puts Krishna in the center of your home. In other words, your existence. And then what does that mean? How do you put Krishna in the center? So you have maybe some small form. Do you have a deity at your home? Yeah, so here's one. So if you don't live near the temple, you may have a deity at your home. And then your activities become connected to that deity. You cook at home, you're going to eat. You offer that food to the Lord. You can chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra or so many other beautiful prayers to the Lord in your home. And you can sing for him, and you can invite others to come to your home and have, like we're sitting here and singing together, chanting for him. So in this way, there's a natural, continuous thought of the Lord that goes through the devotee's mind and keeps the devotee connected with Krishna. So it's said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is this beautiful transcendental literature. It's called the cream of Vedic literature. So you know that the cream rises to the top of the milk. If if you've ever seen milk that's not pasteurized in the store, but you see milk that comes squirting out of the cow, and you let it sit, then this beautiful cream comes up to the top. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is considered to be the cream of all Vedic literature. Vedic meaning knowledge, transcendental knowledge. So what it says, if one worships the deity in the temple, one's mind will naturally be absorbed in the thought of the Lord and his form. There's no distinction between the Lord and his form and the Lord himself. So when we're looking here, this is the name of our deities are Radha Natabar. Radha is the beautiful lady next to Natabar. And this form of Krishna is very unique, even in ISKCON. Dancing Krishna, Natabar, dancing Krishna. There's only 2 temples actually that have this form, and the other form is in Fiji. So there's other forms of Natabar in private homes. One up in the north of Ohio, actually, in Cleveland. There's a beautiful Radha Natabar. So if one worships the deity, then the mind is absorbed. No distinction between the Lord and his form. So therefore, Bhakti Yoga is the most easy system of yoga. So everybody now, quite a lot of people, I don't want to say everybody, like I'm sure there's some people who are not interested in yoga, but let's just say there is a large percentage of the population that is interested in yoga. I think we have a yoga teacher back there, Carly. So it is something that, I mean, in the 70s, even being a vegetarian, or in the 60s particularly, being a vegetarian was a little suspect. You know, you might be considered, maybe you're a communist, you know, something like that. That was a bad thing. What to speak of yoga? And the churches would like rail against yoga, like they saw it as some, you know, like I even saw articles, Satan, yoga is a, you know, Satan is coming through this yoga, like. And in Russia, they were really heavy on it. They, you know, you were caught chanting or reading the Bhagavad Gita, which is another wonderful book of knowledge, you could get thrown in one of the gulags, these labor camps, and devotees were. They were tortured, physically tortured. They were tortured with chemical injections. And the most amazing thing, not one of them cracked. They just stuck it out. And some of them actually gave their life. You know, they were imprisoned and they actually gave their life. But then when the Iron Curtain was dismantled and they could come out, it was an amazing thing. And like I said, the Russian contingent of the Hare Krishnas is very strong, very powerful. And this will mean something for people from India. So if you go to India, there's a very sacred town, very sacred village called Vrindavan. So when we were singing that prayer, Jai Radha Madhava, at the beginning, that bhajan, it's a description of Vrindavan, where Krishna lives. It's a special place where Krishna appeared in this world. So it's in a little village, which is kind of expanded currently, but all the signs, you have the signs in Hindi, Russian, and then English. That tells you how the Russians have developed very strongly. Same thing in Mayapur. They've got signs in Russian all over Mayapur. Mayapur is a beautiful spiritual city where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Anyways, so yogis try to concentrate their minds on the form of the supersoul, means the Lord in the heart, Vishnu within the heart. But the same objective is very easily achieved when one's mind is absorbed in deity worship. And in every temple there is a transcendental form of the Lord. And one may easily think of Krishna by seeing this form. So we see the form during the arti, which there's going to be an arti right after this?
12:30.
Yeah, 12:30?
Yes.
12:30. Okay, so in 20 minutes there will be an arti ceremony. And you'll see that, you can observe that, where different items like incense, a ghee lamp, which is like a little, ghee lamps are like little wicks little cotton wicks dipped in ghee, which is clarified butter, and then they're lit on fire, so there's a beautiful flame, and those are offered to the Lord. And of course, the food that is offered. So seeing this happening and constantly thinking of the form of the deity, one becomes a first-class yogi. So this is in the 6th canto, 2nd chapter, in the purport. And then in this Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto, it says a worshipable deity in the temple is identically, the deity of Vishnu or Krishna, same name, is identical with Lord Vishnu by the inconceivable potency of the Lord. So therefore, a neophyte's concentration or meditation upon the form of the Lord, as contemplated in the revealed scriptures, is an easy opportunity for meditation for persons like most of us who are unable to sit down tightly in one place. You see how people, they will, you can sit for a while, but sooner or later there's a distraction that just breaks your meditation. So having the form of the deity to contemplate and meditate on is very helpful, and that is one of the reasons Krishna does come in his deity form. And then Srila Prabhupada mentions that regarding worship of the form of the Lord, or the deity, Rupa Goswami has written as follows. So Rupa Goswami is a great saintly person. There were 6 such persons that came together in this sacred little town of Vrindavan to look out, to excavate the holy places where Krishna had appeared 5,000 years ago. So find those places, because they'd gotten covered, and write literature so that people in the future like ourselves would have access to this knowledge. And so Rupa Goswami wrote, "My dear friend, if you have any desire to enjoy the company of your friends within the material world, then don't look on this form of Krishna, who is standing on the bank of Keshigat. He is known as Govinda, and his eyes are very enchanting. And he's playing on his flute, and you can see he's playing on his flute. And on his head is a peacock feather, and you can see that. And his body is illuminated by the moonlight in the sky." So what he's alluding to, if you want to enjoy in the material world, don't see this most enchanting transcendental form of Krishna. Avoid it, because once you see this beautiful, enchanting, transcendental form of Krishna, your mind will be captivated. So the purport of this verse is, if someone becomes attached to the deity form of Krishna by worshiping at home or in the temple, he will forget his mundane relationships of so-called love, friendship, and society. So then Prabhupada puts, thus it's the duty of every householder to install deities of the Lord at home and to begin the process of worshiping along with family members. And this will save everyone from unwanted activities, and all nonsense of material life will be forgotten if one stresses the worship of the deities at home. So, but in the home, the deity becomes a guest. You've invited the deity, please come in my home so I can serve you. So engagement in such worship of the deity under the direction of a bona fide spiritual teacher will help the householders to purify their very existence and make rapid advancement in spiritual knowledge. So the point is, theoretical book knowledge is not sufficient for the beginning devotees. It's very hard just to sit and read heavy-duty philosophy for most people, especially in this age. So book knowledge is theoretical, whereas the process of deity worship, archana, is practical. You practically get to do something, And the spiritual knowledge, therefore, must be developed by a combination of the theoretical and the practical. And in that way, it's a guaranteed way for the attainment of spiritual enlightenment or perfection. So one's attention engaged, this is from the Bhagavatam, second canto again, only attention engaged in the service of the Lord, especially in dressing and decorating the temple, accompanied by musical kirtan and spiritual instructions from scripture, can save any common person from the hellish attractions of material life which keep us bound. Now, by saying keep us bound, it means keeping us in a condition that is keeping us separated from God. Our natural position, the natural condition is to be with God in His pastimes, to be part of His pastimes, to see God face to face, to speak to Him. But we're not in that condition yet. But we can attain that position, and that is the practice of Krishna consciousness. So the best process for making the home pleasant in Krishna consciousness is if one is in full Krishna consciousness, the home can be very happy because this process of Krishna consciousness is very easy. And then Prabhupada gave 4 things that will help in this regards. One need only chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. To accept the remnants of food that is offered to Krishna, in other words, this food that has been offered, Krishna prasadam, and to have discussions on the books like the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or if you're from another faith or practice, certainly you can, the Bible, the Quran, other books are there. But books that have as their main topic service to God, loving God. And the 4th one is then to engage oneself in deity worship, either at the home or at the temple, So these 4 things, Prabhupada said, will make you happy. One can train family members in this way. And we see that you'll see these little children when the kirtan starts, they immediately take in, they're immediately attractive. It is so easy, even a child can do it. Here's one such child, he's already smiling. Yeah, it is such a nice way of, to have your family be part of a spiritual process from the very beginning, so that the children grow up with a natural attraction for hearing the holy name, for tasting Krishna prasad, and for hearing topics about Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was present, people wanted to follow him because he was so beautiful. And he requested them to, no, don't follow me, but return home. Return home and begin chanting the holy name congregationally. And he requested them to worship Krishna, chant the holy name, and discuss his holy pastimes. This is mentioned in the Madhya Lila in the 3rd part. So, in other words, it is a simple process. And Prabhupada said the purport to this is that we don't have to open centers all over the world. Anyone who wants Krishna consciousness can do so at home. But the fact is, most of us, when we're home, we get involved in the activities of the home. So having a place to come to, having a temple or a place to come to where we can come together and repose our minds, our consciousness, and worship together, it strengthens our spiritual practice, and it helps uplift the consciousness. And it's actually a very nice way to spend any afternoon or any day together with like-minded persons, So one who feels they're not ready. Of course, formerly we used to actually, wow, look at that, the sun just came out. Very good. So just like the Bhagavatam is like the sun, the Bhagavatam is the book form of Krishna, and it's bringing enlightenment. So in the home or in the temple, the altar, it's Krishna's personal residence. And it should always be kept very clean, very nicely maintained, and when it's in the home, given some prominence, not just in a closet somewhere, you know. So the main difference between the temple worship and the home worship. So the temple worship, it's known as japananga, regulated worship. In the temple, in the home worship, bhaktiananga, which is out of love. And of course, both are out of love, but the home worship may not be as strict as it is in the temple. Because here in the temple, we have it's not so we just go and do whatever we want. It's a scientific process, a spiritually scientific process of worshiping the deity. But in the home, following such a process, which involves many details, is most likely not so possible. But still, one at the home will think of ways to make the Lord's stay at your home more comfortable, and you think of ways to perform your service in a favorable way. So in the Bhaktinanga Seva, we welcome the deity into our abode as a guest, knowing that if you don't look after the guest nicely, the guest may leave. So we want to be very careful that we are not indifferent to the presence of the Lord in our home, so that the Lord will feel wanted. Prabhupada mentions in regard to disease that a disease is like an unwanted guest. So if you have an unwanted guest, if you don't feed that unwanted guest, it'll go away. So we don't want to have the Lord feel unwanted in our home and have him disappear. So we keep our home, we want to keep our guests and keep them happy and cheerful, well-fed, well looked after. Prabhupada says, whatever you cook, you offer it to the deity. Which means we're not going to cook some kind of nonsense thing like meat, fish, eggs, garlic, onions. We're going to cook something very nice and pleasing to the Lord. And that will cause a good mood and well-being in the family. So all arrangements can be made out of love for the Lord in our home, our guest. So in this Bhaktinanga home worship, generally there may be one or two persons doing the seva, because nowadays the homes are quite usually one or two persons and a couple of kids. So I'm sure that in your home, probably a lot of it falls on you maybe. But the whole family takes part in the practice. So even the Christians have this saying that the family that prays together stays together, So that's true anywhere. And in the Japyananga Seva, the most important factors are punctuality, cleanliness, opulence, decorations, the resources, and the functionality of the institution, And in the Bhaktinanga Seva, the most important aspect is the mood, from the swagatam, from the greeting of the devotee, and the attentiveness, and offering really nice food stuff. So, and of course, everything should be done where not out of duty. There is a duty, but that duty should be in a mood of love. That yes, I have this duty, but it's out of love that I'm doing my duty. Just like one has children, there is duty. Feed them, clean them, but there's love involved, But the rules and regulations help us see the deity as the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, and therefore it's important to inquire and receive guidance from experienced devotees in the manner of worship, instead of relying on our own speculation or making up something. Actually, Srila Prabhupada said that the greatest danger in this movement will be when people start making up their own versions of deity worship. And so he was very strict with us that we would be very careful in following the course as he has taught us to us. Sometimes, things you'll ask people, well, why are you doing, like we'll go to somebody and say, why are you doing this? And say, well, my grandma did it. Well, do you know why she did it? No, So we want to develop spiritual knowledge along with our practical activities, and that will help us become more connected. So the more one is involved in the deity worship, then there becomes natural feelings for the deities, and that awakens. And one would be thinking, was Krishna sufficiently fed? Did he get enough? Is he feeling hot? Oh, maybe he needs a little fan. Oh, it's cold. Oh, we should give him a little heater. You know, that is he being taken care of nicely? These mood just comes, just like you would naturally be thinking about your kids. Like, did you have enough to eat? Take a little more. You know, so we have the same feeling evoked from Krishna with the deities. And there's many, many incredible stories that we don't have time to talk about now in 5 minutes, but amazing true stories, real life experiences with the deities. And not all of them were thousands of years ago or 500 years ago. They're happening even today within our temples. Amazing stories where the deities have reciprocated with the love and desire of the devotees. So, in Madhya Lila, my dear Lord, you're not a statue. You are directly the son of Maharaj Nanda. So actually our deity worship shouldn't be seen as direct worship, but that we are assisting the spiritual master as servant of the servants of Srimati Radharani. In other words, just like we're taught from the beginning, we don't walk up directly to Krishna, but we find somebody who knows Krishna and say, can you introduce me to Krishna? So like the spiritual master teaches us how to serve Krishna, how to approach Krishna. So we put ourselves in the mood of assisting the spiritual master. And Lord Chaitanya's mood, even Lord Chaitanya, who was the Lord himself, but he came in the form of a devotee. So therefore, even he was not walking up to God, but he was describing himself as Das Anudas Anudas, as servant of the servant of the servant of the servant who's serving the Supreme Lord. So in that way, that is our mood in serving the deities also. And then Prabhupada said, above all, the offering should be made with an attitude of love. Krishna has no need, like the offering meaning the food that we may offer, he has no need for anything from us because he possesses everything already. But he will accept the offering of one who wants to please him in that way, so out of love. The important element in preparation in serving and offering is that act of love for Krishna. And actually, when we became fully spiritually conscious and we're there with Krishna, the mechanical aspects of having to do things don't even have to occur. In other words, you go back home, back to Godhead, and you're there with Krishna. And you think, oh, I would like to offer a garland to Krishna. Now here we go, I'd like to offer a garland for Krishna. So we have to go get some flowers. Maybe we can pick them if we have enough, or we go and we purchase them. And then we get a needle, and then we get a thread, and we have a scissor. And we arrange the garlands, and we put the flowers in a very pleasing way, and then it's offered to Krishna, right? So when we're back home, back to Godhead, we're in Krishna Loka, and we're thinking, I'd like to make a garland for Krishna. Immediately, the garland is there. Just everything is acting on the impetus of desire. And when Prabhupada first told us that, we were astounded. And one girl goes, but Swamiji, which we called him in those days, Swamiji, what if I want to make it? No need, your desire. Immediately, garland is there. But if I wanted to make it, he says, all right, then you can make it. So deity worships help us fix the wandering mind. Water or flower petals, for example, may be offered to the Lord each day. And if we do that with great love and devotion, Krishna accepts. And becoming aware of this helps bring the mind back to the present with Krishna, instead of thinking about being somewhere else or wanting to do something else as soon as possible, that we actually enter into the pastime of the moment of serving Krishna. And again, chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is a form of service. So by that chanting, if one is attentive while chanting, then one is connected directly with Krishna. So now we're going to have the arti, which is, again, this arti is something that is being done to please the Lord, offering different articles. and for the pleasure of the Lord. So I'm going to stop there. There was a little more, but I'd like you all to join the Arti ceremony, and which will start in just a moment. So, because deity worship requires a variety of different little rituals, so this will be, right now the food has been offered, it's become prasadam. The arti will be offered, these various items, and it just helps us become closer to God. The rituals are not superficial, they're actually there to help us envelop our wandering minds in the mood of serving the Lord, which brings us closer to Him. You know? So, in this age of Kali Yuga, there is the simplest form is by worshiping through this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Him. That is our marching orders. So the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra helps us remember Krishna. And now we can chant, we can dance and clap our hands. Clapping of the hands helps remove this dust from the heart as we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And in this way we can find ourselves becoming more and more closer to Krishna, closer to God, become God conscious, and become happy, even in this lifetime, fully happy, not just sometimes happy. You know. One of the symptoms of a devotee is that they are happy, they're joyful. And if you're not happy and joyful, then Prabhupada said, then you are not yet devotee. So it's not a test, it just gives us something. You know, I guess we all have moments when we don't feel so happy or joyful. But actually, those moments will become less and less when we practice Krishna consciousness through chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So thank you very much. And we request all of you, if you like, to stand up for this. It'll take approximately 20 minutes. And after this, there will be a few announcements, and then this wonderful Krishna Prasad, the sanctified food. Thank you very much.